which has been started by Cobit. Now, this process assessment program is something which has been in the pipeline with ISACA for a long time. Initially, the need for process assessment program was asked by many Cobit implementers. When Cobit first edition came in and Cobit second edition came in, like we had this BS, at that time we had BS 7799. So people used to get certification for BS 7799. They said, can we get certification for BS 9999? BS at that time, can we get similarly for Cobit? But there are no certification available for Cobit, and ISACA said we don't have any plan for coming out with this certification. And in 2000, I did a certification, like I told you, using Cobit principles. I used the approach or the methodology given in BS 7799 and applied it to Cobit. I used the contents of Cobit control objectives, but used the principles or the approach of BS 7799 and did an assessment for Infosys for the Finacle software and sent it to ISACA. That was in year 2000. So I sent all the documents. They also had an interaction with me. I also was asked to make a presentation in the international conference. But later on, it was discussed in the Cobit steering committee, and they decided that as of now, we know that it is possible, but we do not have a framework or structure in place, and we do not want to go ahead with this type of a certification for Cobit. It took nearly 10 years, and then finally in 2010, they said, I think there is a lot of demand in the market, and we can customize Cobit to that extent that we can come out with a process assessment program. Based on that, a separate project team was set up, and a gentleman who has been involved with ISO, an Australian very senior person, was involved, who was the head of this particular task force, and after nearly 2 years of research, they came out with this assessment program. The only issue was that it got delayed, and by that time, 2010, Cobit 5 also started. But this Cobit 4 assessment program already started. In 2012, they released the Cobit 4.1 process assessment program, and then in the near future, there is going to be Cobit 5 process assessment program also. So this process assessment program which is there currently, if you ask, is it available for 5? Currently, no. But is it available for Cobit 4.1? Yes, it is definitely available for Cobit 4.1. Can you use the principles of Cobit 4.1 which are given as the process assessment program is concerned? Can you use this process assessment program principles in Cobit 5? Yes, you can use it very easily, because when we are designing Cobit 5 itself, because we are already knowing how the design process assessment program was going to be done, we ensured that the Cobit 5 was built in such a way that it enables easier assessment. So if you look at the examples which we are going to cover in this particular session, you find it becomes much more easier to get an assessment program done using the Cobit 5 model. This session could be broken into 2 parts. The first part we are going to cover today, and the second part we will take it up tomorrow. So first thing we are going to understand is what is this process assessment model and how do we use it. The second part is we will have a quick walkthrough of a process assessment model assessment. The third is how to implement Cobit, where I will explain in detail how can you use the Cobit implementation guide and implement Cobit. The fourth is where how can you navigate through and select the relevant guidance from Cobit, which I have quickly covered today. Tomorrow we will get into a little more details. Now first let's have a look at what is this process assessment model and why is it based on ISO 15504. There is a lot of debate on should ISACA continue with the existing Cobit maturity model. If you look at Cobit 4.1, there is a maturity model. At the end of each process, there is a 1-page summary which gives you the maturity model assessment, whereby you can use the existing contents which are given in the maturity model and do an assessment. And this was one of the most popular models as far as ISACA is concerned, because many enterprises had used this maturity model for the purpose of doing an assessment of where they are and also for mapping where they want to be and identifying the gaps. But the issue was, as far as this assessment model is concerned, they found that the model was based on contents, and the contents were not complete and exhaustive or comprehensive. The second thing was the assessment was not repeatable, and it was subjective. It depended on the interpretation of specific experts in that particular area. So based on that, they decided we wanted to come out with a particular process assessment model which is standardized, which is universally accepted, and that's why they chose ISO 15504. Then there was a debate, should we continue with the capability maturity model which is already given 4.1, and can we use it for 5? Then after a lot of deliberation, it was decided that if you want to use 4.1, the capability maturity model, you can use it for 4.1 only. The principles of 4.1 cannot be implemented for 5. If you want to get a process assessment done for Cobit 5, you have to use this ISO 15504 model only. Would there be a difference between the assessment model which was done in 4.1 and 5? Yes, definitely there will be differences. How the differences are, in what way is it structured, we'll discuss this a little later. Now, if you look at ISO 15504, as far as the process assessment is concerned, it says it defines it as an activity that can be performed either as a part of a process improvement initiative or as a part of a capability determination approach. So, do you have the capability or do you have mechanism for process improvement? So, it defines each of the terms, process improvement in terms of continually improving the enterprise effectiveness, and capability determination to identify the strengths, weaknesses and risks of the selected process with respect to a particular specified requirement depending on the process you are using and whether it's aligned with the business needs. Now, once you walk through this, I think those who are already familiar with this ISO 27001 and the certification, you find this becomes much more easier for you to understand. Let's look at what is this Cobit assessment program. There are 3 publications available now, out of which 2 are available as a free download, and the third one, I think it costs you about $30 or $40. One is the Cobit process assessment model, second is the Cobit assessor guide, and third is the Cobit self-assessment guide. So, what does the Cobit process assessment model provide? It actually brings the concept, the principles of what is given in ISO and uses the contents of actually Cobit 5, the knowledge repository of Cobit 5. For the purpose of the Cobit process assessment model, they have used this Cobit 4.1 itself and converted the contents for the purpose of assessment, which means if you want to get an assessment, if you already implemented Cobit 4.1, you can get an assessment done for your Cobit 4.1 implementation using this particular assessment model. So, how is this different from the earlier process maturity model, the CMM model? Because the main thing is it's based on the process assessment standard. We'll see what are the differences. So, one important difference as per the process assessment model is that it is more robust, reliable and repeatable because it's much more structured. There is a formal assessment, whether you, like I said earlier, whether it's possible to get assessment. Yes, by using Cobit assessment program, this PAM model, you can definitely get an assessment, which is not possible. The Cobit assessment program will also ensure that it is aligned with ISO standard and it's kept updated. What are the benefits of this particular change between what is there in CMM and PAM? One, there is an improved focus on the process being performed. Earlier, if you look at the maturity model gave contents for each of the process from 0 to 5. So, we use that statements, let's say 3 statements or 4 statements or 5 statements, which was available in the Cobit maturity model, and based on that answering yes or no, enterprise were able to make an assessment. Yes, we have this defined process in place, we are managing this particular process. Based on that, they used to say this particular process we are at level 3 or level 3.5 or level 4.1. Okay, that was on that particular process. Now, in this case, in the case of PAM, the starting level itself is going to be 1, which means mathematically it's possible you are at level 4 as far as the CMM is concerned, but here in this particular level probably you would be at level 0.8. Because starting level itself in the case of PAM is that you have implemented that particular process, you have documentation in place, all that, then only you are at level 1. So, the major challenge is for people who already implemented Cobit, this one capability maturity model, when they want to follow this PAM model, the first thing is that drastically they were earlier at 3.5, 3.6, everything. Now, immediately they start with